besties and bosses. How are you? Happy Tuesday. We have Instagram with us as well. How was your weekend? How was your Halloween? I'm kind of multitasking here as I set up because I had this all set up for us and was ready to go live and something went a little wackadoo. So I'm just making sure, and we're here, no problem. So I'm just making sure we're all set up. But tell me, how was your weekend? How was your Halloween? Did you all dress up? If so, what did you dress up as? I was telling Instagram I didn't dress up. My bonus son this year was kind of in a thing where he is in middle school, his first year of middle school, which is mind blowing to me because I met him when he was 4, but he was kind of in a year where he didn't want to dress up. So we thought we weren't dressing up. And then he had a last minute change of heart and did dress up, but we weren't getting all dressed up. We did have a lovely stroll. I live in Brooklyn and I live in Dumbo, but I live near Brooklyn Heights for anyone who knows that area. And it's all the beautiful brownstones. And we had a really lovely walk. Everything is decorated there. I got to see all the kids in their costumes. It was very challenging for me not to take candy and pretend I was a kid from everyone, but very fun. And one of the decorations, I'm totally on a tangent here, but it's fun to share, was this giant skeleton that we almost took a photo of me next to it. I'm 5'1", and the skeleton, it must have been easily 20 feet tall. It was bigger than the building. It was very, very cool decoration. I was very impressed by this. So that is how this weekend went. And Marie, nice to have you here. Nice to have you joining live. And those of you, hey, Tom, nice to have you on. Thank you all for joining, whoever else is live. We're gonna have some CEO talk today. Before we dive into that, I should share some announcements because I always forget at the end. The Too Much series on the podcast started yesterday. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, we have a 5-day series, a mini series on the podcast, and we're diving into one question each day, one unapologetic question for unapologetic results to help you be too much and make too much noise, impact, and money. It is completely free. Definitely head over to the podcast. We'll have a different episode dropping every day. And then if you want to, there's a link in the profile there. You can also sign up for the bonus playbook with additional journaling prompts and affirmations for you. I'm loving it. Thank you for everyone who's listened and already sent me feedback. It means the world to me. So like you have no idea how much it means to me. Podcasting is different than going live. You're like in your closet by yourself recording. So I really appreciate your feedback. And then other quick announcement for those of you who have been interested in working with me, for those of you who've been curious about what it would look like to work together, who want support in your business, who want that one-on-one support to grow and scale, to make more money on your terms, who specifically want help with the mindset component of being a CEO, getting out of your own way, mindset around money, mindset around asking for money, mindset around selling, mindset around taking up space, mindset around all of the things in business, plus the strategy and action side of things, support with your messaging, your content strategy, your marketing, your sales process. That is what I'm great at. I do have a spot that is available. We don't always have spots available. So oftentimes we're on a wait list. We do have a spot that unexpectedly opened up this month. So it is a great time to book a call with me. These do tend to book really, really quickly. So if you're interested, I will make sure we drop a link. I want to make sure I announce that at the beginning of the live so I don't forget. I would love to support you. Clients have been having epic results. I mean, we've been having, I feel like every day I'm opening up Basecamp too. Someone booking a client, to someone having a record-breaking income month, to someone having a 150K sales week, to someone breaking 100K in their business. So we have a lot of fun and do great work. I would love to support you. Okay, those are my announcements. Hey, Instagram, for those of you saying hi, I appreciate you. Let's dive into today's topic. So we are going to have CEO talk today. We are going to talk a little bit about things that are very relevant culturally that I think we could hear about in our space and then sometimes think don't have anything to do with us in the online business space, specifically the Big Quit and Sarah Blakley's giveaway, which I'll explain. I'll give a little context there for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about. And what I think is when stuff is happening culturally, it's really easy in the online space for us to almost get into a bubble where we think, this doesn't affect us, we're in our own bubble, this doesn't apply to us, we do things differently. And while that can be true in the online space, I think there's also a lot of crossover. I think it's crazy for us to think what's going on globally, culturally, doesn't affect us. We are a part of culture, we are a part of a global business world, all of us as business owners too. I know if you're here, you're heart-centered, you want to make an impact, you want to do things in a different way. So I think in that way, it also really impacts us. And a lot of times what we see happen in corporate spaces, it's sort of like we have to be almost really mindful of the lessons for what it has to do with us, but we are still business owners. At the end of the day, corporate, small business, it's business, period. So I think there's some really great takeaways from what is going on that we can chat about today. These are conversations I've been having with clients behind the scenes, multiple clients, this has come up in different ways in terms of how it's impacting their business, how it's impacting either them or their leadership, or how they're supporting their clients. So we're going to talk about that a little bit today. If you have questions, let me know. I also want to chat a little bit in terms of just some predictions I have, and then really how just some of the lessons you can take for yourself as a business owner and for a leader if you are managing, running a team. So I think there's some really great takeaways for us here. As always, I know I say this every week. I feel like I'm a broken record, but I'm going to say it again. Y'all know I love questions. You know, I love feedback. I share these, I want to have a CEO talk because I think it's important to have a conversation and I think it's interesting, but I want it to support you. So if you have questions, if you have reflections, anything like that, if there's something you're not clear on, if there's something else you want support around, drop it in the comments for me. If you're watching on the replay, just tag me so that I can help you with that. So let's dive in. Let's chat a little bit about just real quick what the big quit is and what I mean. If you haven't heard about Sarah Blakley's giveaway, and then we can peel this back a little bit in terms of kind of what some of those predictions are and what this means for you and I as business owners in the online space, and kind of what some of those marketing insights and lessons for marketing and also your leadership are. So the big quit is, for those of you who haven't heard that terminology, ever since we've all been experiencing COVID globally together, what has happened, at least here in the US, is we are having a statistically higher than normal percentage of people who are quitting corporate jobs, particularly in jobs like the restaurant industry, but really this is happening everywhere. And there's really a shortage. There's a shortage of employees, and a lot of people, and there's various theories and people have been interviewed around why this is happening. But essentially, in past times that maybe there's been not enough jobs to go around, we're very much in a time where the opposite is true. There's not enough employees to go around, and that's really affecting businesses. Here in New York City, it's really interesting. We have a local wine shop that I love going to, and the other day we walked by and they said they were closed for the day because they didn't have staff. And so you're seeing this first, obviously, we can see how this impacts business. First, with COVID, so many places in New York City couldn't be open, and that did a lot of harm to the economy and to industry. And now we're having this really interesting second wave where we're seeing people are just quitting in numbers that just we haven't seen people quitting jobs to this degree. And this is also, translating past service, like restaurant jobs, or service-driven jobs like the wine shop I'm talking about. And this is extending into the corporate world. And so really big conversation for people who have employees who are employing people, especially for jobs that used to be in person. And, now people have experience working at home, having some more freedom, having some more flexibility, not having to commute as much. There's also still a concern, especially here in the city, of COVID is still very real, and we're all on top of one another here. There's a really big, kind of on the hiring side, there's a big concern with being able to find great people and being able to retain people. And I think this is just and we'll break apart how this is relevant for all of us. But that's what I mean by the big quit. If you're like, what in the heck are you talking about? And be curious, because I'm in New York City. So I think I have a slightly different, we all live in different places. The beautiful thing with the internet is we are so global. We live in different places. So I'd be curious to hear from all of you, Instagram as well, if you're noticing this where you live. If you live outside of the US, is this true for you as well? Definitely would love to hear that, because I think it's just an interesting thing for us to be aware of. I'm going to break this down, but let me just share both pieces here. Actually, I'm going to share what Sarah the Blakley piece is, and then we'll break this down a little bit. The other piece here in terms of Blakley's giveaway, just if you don't know what I'm talking about, Sarah Blakley, who is the owner, founder, CEO, thought leader of Spanx. I think she's the youngest female billionaire. She's also she's entrepreneurial. She's a really great, I think, leader and thought leader as well in our space, and does a lot for the space and for women. She recently sold a very large portion of her shares or stake in her company. And then to celebrate, it had like a $1.2 billion evaluation, I guess is kind of where that was. Then to celebrate, she gave every employee in her business a 2 round-trip first-class tickets and $10,000 to spend on that trip. So just so you have context for what we're talking about today. And I think that is amazing for lots of, leadership lessons and for lots of things for us as females, even if you're not a female, but just in terms of what that means to be a female in business. But I think there's also some really interesting strategic things at play that I haven't really heard people talk about that I want to chat about today. But let's rewind the tape to the big quit. So what I think is, there's a couple things here that I think are important for you and I, and then in terms of some predictions and what I think are predictions are, I don't know if I'm actually right or not here, but just this is what I'm noticing and some trends I'm seeing that I think we can be smart as business owners to think about it. Again, would really be interested to hear what y'all are thinking and seeing as we go through this. But I think one of the things we've noticed from the start of COVID is the online space is booming. And I think with the big quit, as what we're calling the big quit, what we're seeing is the online space is only continuing to grow. I think at one point in time, there was almost a thought that well, maybe this would just be a splash in the pan. This would be a blip that people come into the online space because they're, with COVID, everyone was at home and then people kind of get sick of it and leave. And I think what we're seeing is people moving to the online space and using the online space for business, using the online space to connect, using the online space for entertainment, using the online space to sell. This was already here. And now this is here to stay. And I say that because I think for all of us, this means a couple of things. I think one, good news is for most of us, we've been here already. We're kind of the pioneers, but I also think this means we have to notice that things are going to change in the online space. There's, what's her name? Not for Lazy Marketers podcast, Emily Hirsch. She just did an episode around this on her podcast. It's one of the very few marketing podcasts or just podcasts of content I listen to or consume in general. I think she has a really good grounded view on the online space. One of the things she was talking about is how, the online space is really saturated. Some of the louder voices are still the marketing gurus who started in the space 10 years ago, and things have just changed. And what worked 10 years ago is just no longer what is true now. It's just such a different landscape. I think in many ways for you and I, it's a really positive landscape. When I came into the online space, which was 5.5, 6 years ago, while it wasn't as saturated, it was definitely still saturated then, but it was definitely less saturated than it is now. While there's benefits to that, it was also a space where people are like, wait, you do what? You're a coach, you're in the online space. It was this weird thing that no one did. And I think now, one of the beautiful things is it is now becoming so much more mainstream. With that, it means it's a little more saturated online. And I think it's only going to get more saturated. But the positive side to that is it means this is no longer a weird thing where we don't have to work so hard to build up trust with people in the way that before it was almost like, oh my gosh, if I sell to someone or if I buy from someone online, are they who they say they are? Are they going to be weird? Are there things to protect me? I think now we have so much more trust and we know there's just humans on the other side of the screen. Most people are trustworthy. I think a lot of that work has been made easier for us as the space becomes more normalized. Hey, thank you, Instagram. I have to remember to say hi to Instagram as well. Did I just freeze here? No, we're still going. So I think that's a really positive thing. But then with that, I think remembering if people are quitting in the corporate space, if people are quitting in the restaurant space, I think if that's happening more, that also means our space, it simply is getting more saturated. And that is, I think, we're only going to get more and more saturated. And so I think there's a couple takeaways there for us. And then I want to speak to the kind of the predictions lessons piece. I think the other takeaway here is something I've been saying since COVID really started. I think there's such a narrative that the responsible thing to do is to get a job that someone else is your boss, someone else pays your salary, whether that's at a restaurant or at a corporate space, and that it's really irresponsible and it's really risky to be in business, particularly in the online space. And I think one of the blessings to the big quit and to what we're seeing through all of this, and one of the blessings of something that is not a blessing. I am by no means diminishing how very real COVID is and how we have lost more lives than we should with that. But I think what we're also seeing in terms of work and in terms of business is we're starting to see that being a business owner, having an online business is no more or less risky than working for someone else. And I think we're also starting to see where like what the trade-offs are, and that the benefits for many people outweigh the trade-offs. And I think whereas it used to be, the narrative is just like, that's super risky, that's super scary. That's just something not a lot of people do. I think we're just seeing, honestly, both have risks. Lots of people, didn't feel like they were at control when COVID first hit, and both have trade-offs. And I think what we're starting to see with the big quit is we're starting to see people really, I think people were at home during COVID. You and I were at home. We just had so much more time to notice and to see priorities shifting. And I think as a global community, we have had a shift to refocus on values in a way that I think we just haven't had the opportunity to in the past. And I think it is a very privileged thing to be able to focus on values. I also think it's a really important thing for life and business satisfaction. And a lot of how I coach, a lot of how I coach my clients when we're taking a look at their strategy, at their business model, at growing, scaling their business is not just how do we become profitable and how do we make money, but we look at the sustainability piece. And I really believe building your business with your values as a part of your focal point that you filter strategy through, meaning values like if family is a value, if not working 80 hours a week is a value. I don't even know if that's a possibility, but if not burning out is a value, if having time for self-care is a value, if your health is a value, if those are values and priorities, using that for a filter for your strategy, for your business model, for how you set up your business, the same way you would use your business goals, your monetary goals as a filter, and using both of those together. I talk so much about creating your version of success, building a business on your terms. That's what we're talking about here. And that's where I really see sustainability in business coming from. And I think what's really interesting with the big quit is we're seeing the reverse. When a company loses sight of its values, when it loses sight of its employees' values, how it really does deteriorate the sustainability of a company. And really and truly what we're seeing with the big quit is those values on both sides are what's driving sustainability and really what's driving retention and profitability. And so I think what's really interesting for us is I feel like I've been preaching your version of success, building a business on your term, using values as a driver for your strategy, for your business from day one. I think we're now starting to see how linked this is to not only profitability, but to that sustainability on both sides, on employee, on team side, but also on the leadership, on the business owner side. Let me know if that makes sense, or if you want a clarification around any of that. And what I think for you and I, this means, I think this is really great because I think most of us got into business because we're values leading, we're values driven. And I think that's what caused a lot of us to leave corporate spaces or leave other jobs and start a business that's very passion driven. And I think this is an opportunity for us to refocus on those, because I think sometimes, and this is what I support clients with all the time, sometimes as you're growing a business and as you're scaling a business, the reasons you started your business can get lost, and the hustle and we can almost recreate what happens in the corporate space unintentionally because it's still a business. It's what we talked about at the beginning of this live stream, right? Like business is business. And as you're getting in that mode of like booking clients, of creating programs, of wanting to make money, it's very easy to get into the comparison game of just constantly wanting to reach those next goals. I think it's very easy to unintentionally lose sight of the very core reasons you started your business to begin with. And I think what's helpful when we have things like the big quit happening in the corporate spaces or in restaurant spaces and in spaces outside of the online space, it's a good moment for us as business owners to say, wait a second. Instead of like, oh my gosh, that's happening, realize, wait, this is a really great time for me to check in and see what's causing the big quit, and check in to make sure we're not bringing some of those same patterns, the same reasons we probably quit in the first place, the same reasons employees are quitting businesses, that we're not unintentionally bringing those same, I don't even want to use the word viruses. We're not bringing those same challenges into our business, and that we're keeping those values front and center as our focus as we're scaling. I think it's such a great opportunity to check in on that. And then similarly, I think it's also showing us what values, it's teaching us what the market space is saying are important values to them, which I think as a business owner, you can be really, really smart and use this for both your marketing, but also if you're hiring team and you want to hire and retain team. And I think, I mean, let's be honest, as business owners, marketing super, super important. And to, stay relevant in our marketing, that is the lifeblood of your business and what brings in your profitability, what brings in your revenue. So I think it's really important to keep that pulse. And if we're looking at this is happening, what we're also seeing is the world is telling us what is important to them right now. They're telling us what their values are. They're telling us things like flexibility is really important to me. They're telling me there are things that are other than money that are important to me. Otherwise, I would, not quit my job. I think we're getting the message from society that as a global community, I think COVID has given a lot of people time to reassess priorities, and that there are other values outside of just making money, just working hard, just having a safe paycheck that are important. I think we're getting the message that life is too short to burn out and to work 60 plus hours a week, and that balance and finding time to prioritize other things is important. I also think we're getting the message from the global community that there is a general mindset of, wait a second, I also don't have to limit myself. I don't have to burn myself out and then also cap my salary, which is, I think, why our online space is getting more crowded. There's a lot of information here we can take as business owners for marketing, no matter what it is you sell. If this is kind of the general pulse we're hearing, if this is the general experience, I mean, I don't think ever in our lifetime have we all globally experienced something that connects us in a way the way COVID has. I think there's so much we can learn and be really smart about when you're taking a look at your messaging, when you're taking a look at your marketing, so that you can include some of these values that the world is essentially saying in every marketplace is important. So hopefully that piece makes sense. And so again, I don't have a crystal ball. I can't, say, please use your own discernment with everything I'm saying and see how this applies to your business. And I'm not saying there's a one size fits all approach here, but I think it would be smart for all of us as business owners to think, how does this affect my business? How does this affect my messaging? What does this mean for my people in terms of even what I'm speaking to with the challenges I solve, the problems I solve? Has that shifted with this, with the results people want and crave? If I sell something that's more on the desire pleasure side, has that shifted a little bit? And am I including some of these values that people are saying are really important when I'm speaking to results in my messaging? I speak a lot about making money in your business, right? If I'm thinking about this is also then I probably want to be really smart and make sure I'm not forgetting that on your terms part, and not forgetting that sustainability piece, not forgetting that, and you can make money without burning out piece. And I can help you do that in my messaging, which is absolutely true. Always come from a place of integrity and speak the truth there. But I'm hearing, if this is what's happening in the world, I'm very much hearing this is something that's important, speaking to people. So I think this can be a form of market research for all of us. Let me know if that makes sense for all of you. And I think in terms of a prediction, I think what we're going to see is we're going to see more and more in spaces, businesses that are thriving, that are putting people first, focusing on people and focusing on those values and remembering to include that in their messaging, in their mission. And companies that are forgetting to put people first, that are forgetting to put not just people, but the values of people, that are forgetting to take those into account, are going to struggle and have a more challenging time. And I think that's just my prediction, but I think that's really what we're going to see. And we're getting into the holiday season. It'll be really interesting to see as consumers, as we vote with our dollars, where are we putting our dollars? Because when we buy things, when we invest in things, we are saying, this is what I believe in, this is what my vote is. And I have a very strong feeling. I think we've been moving the last decade more and more towards companies, towards businesses that have a mission, that have a heart, that are about more than just making money or selling a good. But I think we're going to see even more. And hey, Instagram, let me know if you have any questions as well. I've seen a few more of you jump on here. I think we're going to see this more and more, not just in terms of the, what's the word I'm looking for? Not just in terms of having a global cause. I think we're going to see this also shifting to the messaging and where we're putting people's values front and focus, and really supporting businesses and companies with that. So let me know if that's making sense. I think on the business owner side, and then I will get to the Sarah Blakley piece I'm having fun with the CEO talk, and I'm like wanting to go down rabbit hole. So y'all let me know again if you have questions on any of this. I think on the CEO business owner side, I think there's a lot here for those of you who have team, whether that's a team of one or a team of many, for those of us who are, whether you're building your team for the first time, growing your team, expanding your team, thinking about having a team. I think there's also a lot we can learn here from, again, the corporate space, from the restaurant space with the big quit, and lessons we can take in our business to make sure we're not recreating accidentally the same thing. And I think I say this because I think I just see this so much when you start your business and you're first in that place, you're in the mindset of the big quit. And it's sort of like, I'm never gonna be that business owner who doesn't care, who doesn't, care about these things and think about these things. And I think the more you get into being a business owner where suddenly profitability is important and you're in charge of paying people and you're creating jobs and making sure the business is having a healthy profit margin and you're paying for all the expenses, I think there are all of these other factors that come into play. And suddenly you become the new corporate mindset that realizes, wait, there's a reason a lot of these corporate structures are in place. There's a reason a lot of these things maybe I resisted when I was on the employee side are actually really important. And so it's easy to almost lose sight of and to become the very thing we left. And I talk with clients about this a lot. What we have to look at is how do we not throw the baby out with the bathwater, not have the pendulum swing, and find how do we take the really useful things from corporate world, from business spaces outside of the online space to put into our businesses, to put into our leadership, because there's a lot of really good stuff there, like a lot of really great stuff. And then how do we also take the lessons for the things that are a little more toxic, because we have a benefit. You and I were, even if you have a team of 20 or 100, we're still small businesses, which makes it a lot easier for us to implement some of the things that when you have a large business, when you're dealing with numbers on a much larger scale, are just a little bit more difficult because there's just that many more people to navigate, to manage. There's so many more layers of people you have to go through to even create change. So I think we're in a really lovely position where we can be mindful of this, take the lessons, bring this into our businesses, create businesses that are set up the way that we want, that we would want on either side, but also remember not to just discount, to like have the pendulum swing and discount some of the really good things that come from corporate as well as we're building businesses. Some of the lessons I think we're seeing with the big quit, and what I would just offer for those of you who have team, and again, there's not a one size fits all, but these are things that I'm noticing, things I'm talking about with clients with their teams, things I'm noticing with my own team, stuff I'm trying to be mindful of. No one here has to be perfect, but I think the more we're mindful, like being mindful can go a long way. I think what we're seeing, again, we're just getting the message from the space of what's important to people. I think more than ever after COVID, and I think what the big quit is teaching us is, again, flexibility, just like what values are important. I think flexibility is an important value. And I should rewind the tape. I think one of the blessings we have in the online space as business owners with teams with the big quit is we are getting a pool of talent unlike we've ever had before. And I think I say talent because I think you and I, we're all talented. We are all talented in our space. And I think what's happening as people are leaving other spaces and coming to the online space, it is just increasing the talent pool in a really beautiful way. And that's a way I would invite you to think about the online space getting more saturated and being louder and being more noisier. I would just see it as we're just getting more talented. We're just increasing our cachet in a way where, we didn't have as many people. We just didn't have as much talent to pull from or to help kind of raise the standard of the industry. So I think there's a lot of really great things about this. And I think for a hiring perspective, for those of you who are having team, because so many of us do have team members where they are independent contractors, they're their own business essentially, and we're hiring them part-time. A lot of the values like flexibility are inherently built in. So I think it's actually, I hate to say like, I feel bad for the restaurant down the street. I think that is unfortunate. And I think it's also, we can see both sides. So it's unfortunate for restaurant spaces, but also really a beautiful thing for our space in terms of what kind of what kind of benefits I think it's bringing to our space. But I also think that that means now more than ever, again, on the marketing side and on the leadership side, we have a responsibility, and it just is louder. So we have a responsibility to make sure we're that much more focused on our messaging, but also that much more focused on team and team retention, and making sure we're keeping that values focus front and center and not losing sight of that, because I think that is going to be such a differentiator. All are very, very quiet. So let me know if you have questions, if this is making sense. So with that, so I think flexibility, really important value we're seeing. I think what we're also learning with this is that no longer can a strictly sticks and carrots reward system work in business with team leadership. This is something, we did a live stream on this, and this is something that Daniel Pink talks about in his book Drive quite a bit. So this is not a concept I came up with, but if you want to read the book, I think it's an excellent book. But the whole idea here is I think there's such a mentality, or there can be a mentality in leadership, that what drives people and motivates people is what we call sticks and carrots, meaning punishing people or rewarding people. And just what they found over and over again is really people are motivated more intrinsically by internal motivation. And part of what can internally drive people are things like autonomy, giving people a sense of autonomy, and also helping find internal drives, the values we're talking about, and also the values of your business, helping your team understand how their work supports a bigger mission, values in that sense as well. These can be drivers that are equally, if not more sustainable than the sticks and carrots, the simply like rewards and punishment. And I think this is really fascinating. I think I love this just from a psychology aspect. I love this just in terms of seeing like what motivates all of us as business owners, and just seeing we're rarely just motivated by things like making money. I know for me in business, if it were just about money, I would have a very different business model for one thing. And I make a lot of different choices. I'm motivated by many things outside of sticks and carrots, outside of simply making money, right? So of course it's going to be the same thing for the people I support, my clients, as well as my team. And I think that's just it's just a helpful lesson we're seeing from the Big Quit, because I think part of what the Big Quit is showing us is it's not simply enough to get a paycheck anymore. And it's not simply enough, to have that piece. And a lot of people are leaving because they want more than a paycheck. They want a paycheck that isn't capped or limited, but they also want the flexibility, that autonomy. And I think we're seeing people also want to be tied to something that feels like it's about more than just like the mission-driven piece. So I think, again, really, really helpful on the marketing side for you as a business owner, but also as you're growing a team, as you're building a team, as you're having a team, just seeing that. Because I will tell you, as a business owner with a team, and as I support clients with team, and as we're seeing, I think what we're seeing in the online space, outside of the online space with the Big Quit, is it's really challenging to sustain and scale if your team is quitting. It's very costly, and it's really not beneficial to businesses. The same is true for you and I. And so I think it's sometimes easy in business to just get wrapped around, how do I just sell as much as possible, and to forget part of sustainability and scalability is also having a really solid team that is also sustainable and that wants to stick around, that wants to be there, that isn't part of the Big Quit, that can really support that sustainability and scalability. So I think it's a really helpful lesson. And I think this is just for all of us a really great reminder of remembering to focus on things in your business outside of simply what you're selling, and remember what are the pieces that go into allowing you to sell that, which includes, of course, your values, that's why we talk about things like self-care and mindset so much, but that also extends to your team. Hey, I see a nice face. Is that Steph on there? Hi, Steph. We're doing the live Instagram and on Facebook. It's fun for me to have both. So if you have any questions, let me know. Facebook as well. I'm pausing to see if you all have questions, reflections, always open to them. So with the sticks and carrots piece here and what we can take away, I think just again, that reminder, and I will see if I can figure out which live stream that was. It might've been a year ago, but I'll see if I can find it. It was on Team and link to it. So I don't want to overly talk that today, but I think what we can see is just keeping those things in mind with Team. How can you encourage autonomy? How can you keep things like flexibility in mind. How can you really keep values in mind for your business and for team? And how can you find ways to help your team be intrinsically motivated so that you're really connecting their work back to some of those values, back to some of the bigger mission. I think this is it's something I'm always trying to be mindful of. And I think it sounds almost like, oh yeah, duh, but it's really, when you're in the day-to-day, easy to forget about. And so I'll share one of the things we try to the best of our ability to do is when we're chatting about, anything we're having team do, really trying to be mindful of linking it back to how that supports the business on a larger scale. Meaning, if someone is supporting me in the Facebook group, for example, or if someone's supporting me with posting content or scheduling content, really helping them see how that's either supporting our audience or helping people make changes. If we get, feedback or wins, sharing that with them, or helping them see how that frees up time so that I can support clients, how they can go out and support other people, but helping connect what people are doing to how that actually supports the business and a bigger mission or a bigger goal, I think can be really helpful for that intrinsic motivation. And the autonomy piece, again, I want to be mindful not to go too far down a rabbit hole on this, but I think with that, a lot of what we think about is, and shout out to my coach, because she's helped me a lot with this in terms of team, is thinking about how really with our business, and really you think about this in corporate as well, it feels so good when you're not micromanaged in how you do a task. And so we like to think more about what is the overall goal in business, what's the overall thing we're trying to achieve, and seeing that as really the thing that's important. And then the way we get there, giving a lot of autonomy around that. So for example, one of the things one of my team member helps me with is writing captions for the Instagram stories we do on Instagram. And so there's a general process we follow. There's a general overall, desired result. But in terms of how she creates that, there's a lot of autonomy in that. And I'm assuming, I hope she feels this way. I hope that gives her a lot of freedom and autonomy to play within that process, and for her to see I'm not micromanaging that. Really all I care about is the outcome, the end result there. And that gives us both, I think, a little bit more of that flexibility, freedom, and that autonomy. So that's just an example there, and something you can think about. I think is one of the core takeaways and reminders we can take from the Big Quit. There's a lot there just in terms of retention, which brings me to, we're going to tie this up because I've been chatting for a while here. I just find this so fascinating. I think there's so much we can learn from looking at businesses and looking at what is happening outside of our online space. We get so myopic sometimes in terms of just what's happening on Instagram, what's happening in Facebook, and we forget the lessons we can learn in a business at the end of the day. So I find this stuff fascinating. Hopefully y'all do as well. With Sarah Blakley, who just let's just give her some praise hands for so many different things in terms of being a role model, in terms of what she has achieved. She's such a great thought leader and gift to the entrepreneurial space. And with what she did, I want to break this down because I think there's some really great takeaways there. I think it was incredibly generous, and I think it's a part of her mission, but I also think she's a really smart businesswoman. So just to recap, in case anyone's joined in halfway and didn't catch the beginning of the live stream, doesn't know what the heck I'm talking about, Sarah Blakley is the owner CEO of Spanx, and she recently sold, I think, a very large or significant portion of the shares for Spanx. And to celebrate, all of her employees were given 2 first-class tickets, round trip anywhere in the world, and $10,000 to spend, to use for their travel. And she did a whole party, and she celebrated the evaluation of her business, and just how much grit and resilience she's had in growing this business. She's the youngest self-made female billionaire, I believe. So much to celebrate there. And so I think it's really easy to see that. And I mean, let's be real, that is incredible on so many levels outside of just this live stream conversation. I think there's just so many empowering pieces from that. I think it's also incredibly generous. And hey Alex, thank you for asking to be on the live. We're doing, you're welcome to leave a comment. We're doing a solo live today though. I think there's so many things there in terms of the altruism, in terms of the generosity, in terms of Sarah Blakley really walking her talk and being someone who puts her money where her mouth is and really putting her company first. And I think there's so much to what we're talking about in this live stream in terms of lessons we can learn from the big quit and being a smart business owner that intentionally or unintentionally, I have no idea. I didn't get a chance to sit down and talk with Sarah Blakley, but I think she's a very, very, very smart businesswoman. I've seen her on Shark Tank as well. I've, seen her in different interviews. I think she's incredibly big-hearted, mission-driven. I think there's so much there that's heart-centered. And I think sometimes when we hear heart-centered and we hear mission-driven in business, we think that means you only have to like give everything away or be a super smart business person. And I think she's a really great example of you can be very heart-centered and mission-driven and a super fucking smart business person. And I think what she's demonstrating here is such a great example of both. How beautiful, what a beautiful thing to give to her employees. What a beautiful way to be heart-centered, to be mission-driven, to be walking your talk. And think of how smart this is. If we're in a global situation where people are quitting and it is like, I have clients who are consultants and coaches who I have multiple clients who work in more of the corporate space. And part of what they do on the leadership side is really supporting companies with hiring and onboarding and retention. And if we think about this is like people are panicking in the corporate space in terms of how am I going to retain employees? How am I going to keep employees? Because employees cost money to hire and cost money to train, and they are directly linked to your bottom line in your business and how much money your business is able to bring in and sustain. And anytime you lose an employee, right, there's a time gap. Your business, it costs money to bring someone else on, and there's that time lag before they're kind of in a well-oiled fashion being able to support the company to bring in income revenue with whatever their role is, right? So if this is a really big challenge and people aren't having enough employees, and I'm going to the store down the street and they're closed for the day because they don't have enough employees, it's also a very smart strategic move to take that, like to use a big win to take really good fucking care of your people and give them plane tickets and $10,000. And I think that probably is far less of a cost than what it costs Spanx to lose a very large segment of their employees when a company has come in and bought a majority of their shareholder. They're going through a big transition. So I think this is a really smart business move as well in terms of how do we keep our people happy? How do we retain our people? How do we see that this is actually the best place to put our money in our business? And it's a really important place to put our money, our focus, and our attention. And I say that because I think it's just important to see it can be both. It can be absolutely heart-centered and genuine. And so like, and again, I don't know, I'm not in Sarah Blakley's mind. I don't know if this is why. I'm sure it is absolutely something she's always wanted to do. And I think we can also see how it's also a really, really, really smart place for her to put her money in her business. And in terms of that cost, really smart cost in terms of what that will do long term for the business. You better believe suddenly there are employees that they're going to be able to retain, that are going to want to show up differently, that now through a transition, I don't know what this means for the company if she's stepping out more with their shareholder, but that are going to want to stick around, that are going to want to, who are now in terms of having that intrinsic motivation, are going to have a completely different intrinsic motivation and loyalty and see their values being supported, their values in terms of wanting to be with family and travel and flexibility and not burning out. So I bring that up as an example because I think it's a really great way to illustrate what we're talking about in this live stream in terms of some of those business predictions, some of those lessons we can glean, and just some of what we can start seeing in terms of what's going to help a business thrive, and just I think where we're seeing businesses that are going to sustain and thrive and what they need to focus on in both their marketing and leadership, and what we're going to see in terms of what's going to cause business challenges. And I think Sarah Blakley's giveaway is, I personally think, brilliant, heart-centered, but also very business savvy and very strategically smart that you and I can take lessons from. Marie says, my husband's work gave us vacation at his 10-year anniversary and then again at 15 years. We had to book it and he had to submit the receipts to be reimbursed. Could have just done a bonus. They did this. I need a little water because I've been talking now suddenly for an hour. First, I love that they did that because I think it's exactly what we're talking about. And I think gives really great insight into probably why your husband's been in a company for 15 years plus, if they've been able to retain him as an employee for so long. I think, yes, they could have just given a bonus, and I think it's so cool that banks did that. I think it's just so smart it's sort of the, what is it? The Oprah effect, when someone wins a car and suddenly they can't afford the taxes to receive the gift. I think there's a lot of foresight here in terms of, if we're going to give this gift to our people, let's make sure we make it really easy for them to use. Sort of like if you give someone a gift certificate somewhere that asks for a tip, including the tip makes it a lot easier for them to go and use the gift certificate. And I think that's what you're saying. In terms of your husband's, like it would have been easier if they gave a bonus. And I think kind of meta in terms of what we're talking about here with the big quit and to some of these lessons, I think it also says a lot that his company does that and that they support y'all in that way, and probably speaks a lot to the other values they have and the other things they bring into in terms of supporting their people, and probably why he's been at that company for so long. So yes, could have just done a bonus, and also really cool that they did this in terms of giving that. I think they are ahead of the game, and there's a lot to be learned there, and so much evidence that he's been there for so long. So thank you for sharing that. I think that is beautiful. Okay, I need one last sip of my water, y'all, because my voice, I'm losing it. Not losing it, but I feel myself losing my voice. So let's wrap this up. My clients joke, tease me, because I always say at the end of our call, let's wrap this up in a bow. Let's put a pin in this. Let's tie this up. Let's summarize what we talked about. So if you're one of my clients watching now in the replay, you can laugh, because I say that all the time. But let's tie this up in a bow and recap this. Wanted to bring this to all of you today because, again, I think there's just, for all of us, I'm always noticing and wanting to pay attention to business outside of our space, whatever your space may be, not just the online space, but also whatever industry you're in. So I'm in, the business online space, I'm in the personal development space. And I think there's so much for all of us to learn about business and lessons we can pick up when we take a look at industries outside of ours. Business is business at the end of the day. And sometimes it's easier to see things through a lens that isn't our own, because we get so close to our own space and it becomes so normal. It's hard, we just get so in the day-to-day too, and we're often so close to it. So overall, I think one of the things we can notice here is just how many parallels there are and how many lessons we can take from industries and spaces outside of ours. With the just seeing no questions, no comments. And then with Big Quit and with Blakley's giveaway with business predictions and kind of big picture, just put them in a summary here for you. I think just seeing that business online space is definitely, I think we're booming, and I think we're going to continue to boom. I think for those of you who are worrying about it being saturated, I would just reframe that as we just have a bigger talent pool. And I think that also means we've also built a lot more trust in the online space. So I think while yes, there are more people, there are also more people buying, investing from the online space than ever before. So I think, with the influx, there's also more of a need and more of a trust that we just didn't have before. I think it also means that what was working 10 years ago, we have to be very mindful not to pay attention to, like, here's the information from 10 years ago, and just seeing things are shifting, things are evolving, and we want to keep our minds on that in the online space as things are growing, evolving. I think it means we just need to be a little more sharp with our messaging and focused on really being specific in our messaging. I think that's always the case, but I think as things get more crowded, we just have to be that more tight around things like messaging and our marketing. And this isn't to put pressure on anyone. I think it's just, this is how your people are going to hear you. And I think we also can learn a lot from the Big Quit in terms of what the global community is telling us in terms of their values, in terms of their needs, in terms of their wants, that we can apply to messaging. And then I think just from a prediction standpoint, I think we're going to see, it'll be really interesting to see over the holidays, but I think we're just going to see more and more companies that are speaking to those values, like flexibility, to life-work balance, to family, to prioritizing self-care, to not burning out, right? Just so many of the things I think we rediscovered through COVID, through lockdown, through being at home, through, for the parents who are at home working. I think we're going to see those companies thriving and people voting with their dollars for those companies, even if they're more expensive. I think we'll see. That's my prediction. And then I think on the business owner side, there's so much we can learn from this and from Sarah Blakley's giveaway. And I think big picture here, remembering you can be heart-centered, mission-driven, and a smart business owner. They are not mutually exclusive. In fact, I often think they are, two sides of the same coin. And I think what we can see with what Sarah Blakley is doing is just really the importance of treating your people well, of thinking, how can I really reinforce my people's values and my company's values using a value-focused approach for your strategy, but also for your team leadership. And then thinking through things like, how can I create intrinsic motivation and autonomy with my team? Because I really think that's what's going to help us now in the online space. Because now there is a more talent pool. I think more people are going to want to work in flexible jobs online than ever before, which is so great for us and our teams. But I think this is how we can build really strong teams and not unintentionally create the part of corporate that isn't as serving, but keep the parts of corporate that are serving. Okay, I hope that was helpful for you. I'm just seeing if we have any last questions. If you're watching on the replay, definitely throw any reflections at me. I love having some CEO talk. I hope this was beneficial for you and helpful for you to think through with your business and to have you think through some things on both your business marketing, the values, the way you're structuring your business, as well as on the leadership side. And then a quick reminder, we have the Too Much series on the podcast this week. You can listen to these in any order. It is completely free if you head over to the podcast, and make sure we drop a link for that. Definitely catch those episodes. We're unpacking one question each week to help you be too much and make too much noise, impact, and money on your terms, of course. And if you do want to sign up, we'll make sure we include a link. I'll make sure I include a link here in the comments as well for the bonus playbook with journaling prompts and affirmations for you. And then again, I do have a coaching spot that has become available this month. That is not always the case. So if you want support, if you want CEO talk, if you want help with your messaging, with your marketing, with being a smart business owner who's also heart-centered, of marrying those two together so you can show up, so you can take up space, yes, but do so in a really smart and strategic way that has you heard above the saturated noise we have going online. So you can book more clients, so you can be one of those business owners that is thriving and also building a team and being able to lead them in a way that is sustainable. That is what I talk with my clients about all day long, as well as the mindset behind it. I would love to support you. I will make sure we drop a link for that below as well. All right, I love you all so much. I'll be back next week. Next week, we have a fun live. I have a special guest, and we'll be doing a bit of a workshop. And I'll wait till next week to share with you, but I think it's going to be fun and something different than what we've done in this group before. So I'm looking forward to bringing that to you. Instagram, I love y'all. Thanks for hanging with me. And then besties and bosses, y'all, just thank you so much for hanging with me every week. It means the world to me. I'll be back next week. Bye.